That's not a comic book. Now that's a comic book.
So anyway, here we are wrapping up the Matt Wagner Zorro run with Zorro Rides Again. Volume 2. The Wrath of Lady Zorro. This was disappointing. It's not bad, but the art takes a major drop in quality because they switch artists for this volume. And what they're setting up and what they set up in Volume 3 doesn't get paid off. And that's not their fault. They didn't know they were going to run out of issues. But at the same time, as much as I enjoyed Tales of the Fox, it's a little disappointing to have an entire volume just be an anthology thing that doesn't really do much but subtly set up a villain in the background throughout each issue. Zorro doesn't want to wait to be talked about. Even when I have nothing but bad things to say. Not nothing but bad things, but certainly less than flattering things to say. No, it's just that, the villain that was set up in the third volume, Tales of the Fox, that never goes anywhere. And then, the only thing that gets paid off from that volume is Diego's father dying. And I guess we get Lady Zorro in here as well, but they don't get the monster. No, because that was set up in Zorro Rides Again Volume 1. So we get Lady Zorro coming in here, and she is pretty much what this volume is about. Hence, Wrath of the Lady Zorro. But El Gago, how do I say his name? The Hound, the Gonzalez, he doesn't get paid off enough. Like, he starts out as a actually good villain finally, a competent villain, let's say, because he was always fun to read if nothing else. But we don't get any conclusion of his story in this issue or in this volume, and they couldn't publish anymore after this. At least they haven't been able to. So really, this is, the end of this is the end of the run, at least for now, unless they get a chance to come back with it yet again. And what's it going to be called? Zorro Rides Again. So this is the end of that part of the run for the foreseeable future, and all it really does is finish off Lady Zorro's story. And what it is she confronts Zorro, or she goes off killing people in cold blood, which he is not okay with. He confronts her about it, and they fight El Gago, and then she's injured, and he takes her to the den and cares for her, then tells her that she can't just be a cold-blooded killer anymore, and then she rides off into the sunset to be on the right path of justice, not just rage. I just don't think that's enough. We had the regent character, the governor character, whatever you want to call him. He doesn't get any conclusion, and like I said, there are only two story elements in Volume 3 that got any kind of setup, and that was him and Diego fighting out, or Alejandro finding out Diego is Zorro, and only one of those things got paid off. So we got this villain who's just sitting there waiting to be paid off, and then we got El Gago, who's set up at the end of the last volume and appeared throughout this. And he doesn't get, his comeuppance or anything. He just kind of shows up, is a problem for a little while, and will be dealt with later on. So really, all we've gotten is a payoff for the death of Zorro's father, and the payoff for the Lady Zorro character. And with the hit in the art, oh my god, it's not bad. Some of these panels just look terrible, though. It doesn't look right. Look at her face. It's such an awkward face. Zorro's too, but still, it's just... And it's so sketchy. I don't like sketchy comic book panels. Doesn't look good. Where's that image of Diego? I was very disappointed by this in a lot of ways. It's okay. It's just not as good as it could be. And without getting to pay everything off, it's very disappointing in that way. This could have been brilliant. They need at least one more volume to wrap up their loose ends here, and they probably aren't gonna get it. Sorry, Matt Wagner. You probably should have gotten a little quicker with your stories, man. There's some fun stuff with Zorro, like scaring the wits out of the Alkalade. That was pretty clever. They kind of setting him up as a really superstitious guy, and so Zorro starts to pick up and play that part of it up and everything. And that was pretty funny. It's always nice to see Zorro embarrass public officials, but still, it's so much left undone. If there were another volume, I'd probably be much less harsh on this than I feel like I am being. But for the moment, at least to the best of my knowledge, there is not. And that sucks. So, it's a tricky thing to balance, I feel, when doing comic book writing, because, it is supposed to be it is supposed to be both episodic and have a bit of an anthology element to it. Anthological, if that's a word. And so you have to be able to balance that. You have to be able to satisfy the story you're telling in the issue that you're telling it in, and also leave people enough to come back wanting more. You need to leave an air of mystery about it so that people will come back and want to read more of it. And this just doesn't... This did too much of one and not enough of the other. It set up too much. It wrote more checks than it could cash. The way comic books usually work is you're given a contract of the number of issues you're going to do. And so you tell your story in those issues. And occasionally you can, undershoot it a little bit or overshoot your contract. And you'll be fine, but counting on being able to get a renewed contract to do another story arc is really problematic, because if your book's not selling, then you're not going to be able to do it. So all you've done is left the people that were reading and enjoying your book with a bunch of loose ends that don't get tied up. And that sucks. And that's what we have here. We have a bunch of loose ends that aren't tied up, and that's disappointing. So, yeah. Ultimately, with the Matt Wagner Zorro run, now that I've done all of it, I would recommend the first 2 volumes. You can get the third still. I think the third almost just entirely stands on its own. And then, you can read Zorro Rides Again, Volume 1. And that might just be the best place to stop. Because all this will do is just leave you wanting more, but not in a good way. Especially since you're probably not going to get it. So yeah, I'd probably say the first 2 volumes are the best stuff of the Matt Wagner Zorro run. It's got just a lot of really great moments in it. And then the third volume is certainly enjoyable. It's a lot of fun. I had a big smile on my face while I was talking about it. But it's just, all it does is leave you wanting things that you're never going to get. So I can't recommend reading it knowing that it's not going to be properly concluded. And this, I enjoy parts of it, so if you're loving everything in the Wagner Zorro run, should you start reading it, you might as well read the whole thing, even if it might not ever be ended.
That's not a comic book. Now that's a comic book.